Welcome to another episode of Democracy and Education. In this episode, we have Mr. Peter Glodfarb, who is a renowned director and actor and very well informed about cinema, both in the United States and in Italy and Europe in general.
And theater.
And theater, exactly. Peter is here to tell you a tiny bit of his experience with cinema and theater, because we really don't have all the time that it really takes to give a fair and just coverage of his accomplishment. Mm-hmm. He's a highly accomplished man, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself and say hello to our audience before I start asking my questions.
Thank you for the flattery. I appreciate it. On the other hand, I don't want to keep all of you here all night telling you everything that I've done. So I will edit.
Yes. So I know that you kind of launched to fame with the movie production of Life of Fellini, with a story called Notes from Fellini.
Notes. The English was Fellini Notebooks of a Director.
Of a director.
Or a director's notebook.
Which came out in mid-70s.
76, I believe, something like that. Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit about that, and how did you come with the idea of covering Fellini?
Sure. Be happy to. I was working at NBC at the time. NBC had hired me, actually, with a mandate of improving the quality of television, mm-hmm. which was quite an honor, I should say, because I was only 24, 25 years old at the time. So in preparing for that responsibility, which was obviously a huge responsibility, I set up for myself and for the other executives a list of priorities. One thing on that list was to bring, in order to improve the quality, to bring to television and to NBC talent of various different kinds that had never appeared on television before, mm-hmm. because we do need to remember, well, whether we need it or not, we might remember that those were the days in which television was still called the boob tube. So we wanted to have a little more quality there.
Right.
So there was two kinds of priorities. There was the external priority, which I just said, and the internal priority, in my thinking, well, who would I most like to work with? Mm-hmm. So out came right away, without any hesitation, was Federico Fellini. Mm-hmm. I was great fond of his. Mm-hmm. And so they said at NBC, at CBS, they said, fine, that's fine. So I assumed that how was I going to ever, have any kind of connection with Fellini without being introduced to him. I mm-hmm. needed someone to introduce me. So having spent a lot of time in Rome since was beginning, I think, at the summer of my freshman year, and also having gone to school there, I was partially educated in Italy. And so I started thinking, well, I just have to find somebody. I had made some contacts, friends, while I'd been there over time. And so I asked them, could they introduce me, and they all said yes, but they were not ever able to find him. He's a very elusive character, and he was on the top of mountains someplace, and so on and so on. Until one of the people I asked was a fellow named Guido Guidi, who was his assistant for his, I think it was his fifth film, maybe. And Guido, when I asked him, he said, well, just write to him. I said, what? He said, yeah, just write him. Well, don't I need that? No, just write him. So I wrote him a letter, and very quickly, actually, he responded saying, thank you for your letter. Let me know when you're in Rome, and we can meet. So that was already far more simple than I had expected it
Yeah.
to be, So in fact, that time was established for a meeting between Federico Fellini and myself, young Peter Glodfarb. I was, 125, something like that at the time.
Wow.
So it became a big event, and NBC sent a whole bunch of people down, of press people, and so on. And Federico had his own entourage as well. And this was to take place at the place was actually, it was a hotel, a very interesting old hotel in the center of Rome, which was also the scene, a scene from his film of his wife, Julieta of the Spirits. So I was due to arrive at a certain hour, and he was, it was supposed to be a certain hour. Well, since I was not yet that I knew the famous phenomenon of Roman traffic, I left when I thought would be an adequate time, but it was not. So what happened?
So you arrived late on your first
1/2 hour late.
With Fellini.
That's correct. Well, the scene was absolute rank hysteria on the part of every person there. How dare you? How could you? And so on and so on, and everybody biting their fingernails, and could you dare, and blah, 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 and so on. But
there was nothing you could do.
What I could do. So there were only two people calm. One of them, which was myself, and guess who the second was? Fellini. So I almost like to say that if it weren't for this, the project might never have happened, because of the fact that I was late. He had another engagement, so we didn't have time to talk business or anything like that. So what happened is we just kind of chatted within each other, and talked about our parents and, I don't know, all kinds of things. And
but the picture behind us is not from that first meeting, is it?
This is from when the film was being shot, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah. No, we were total strangers to each other. I don't think people were well, they might have been. I don't remember, to tell you the truth. So we chatted away, and it was very friendly. And he had to leave, and he said, "Excuse me, let's get together again." So
but this time, don't be late.
What? No, nothing of the kind. Nothing of the sort.
Wow, he was gracious.
It was completely. It was more than gracious. It was just natural. He was a very down-to-earth person.
Must have liked you.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently he did.
Obviously, you were very well informed about his work when you talked to him, and probably that knowledge came across. And
well, yes and no.
How many of his movies had you seen before your first meeting? Had you seen Amarcord?
Of course.
Yes.
No.
La Strada?
A good part of them. Strada,
Nights of Cabiria.
And
La Dolce Vita.
Naturally, La Dolce Vita. But the truth is that, you see, I was 74, 75 years old. I was
24, 25.
24, sorry. Excuse me, rushing a bit. That's now, or after now. I get those times mixed up, those years mixed up. And I, in no way did I then or any place after that time kowtower to him or try to play anything that I wasn't, which was a simple person. In terms of knowledge, I knew I had seen a lot of his films, but otherwise it was not an issue of trying to impress me, nor was it the other way around.
Did you suggest to him in your first meeting
Yeah.
about the making of the notes of Fellini production?
No, not at all, because
No.
there was no time.
I see.
No time. What happened after he said, "Let's get together again," which can only mean that there was some
Interest.
spark.
Yep.
That happens between people.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to have, in a very unlikely manner,
Right.
happened to somehow there was a connection.
Yes.
So there was no strangeness whatsoever. And so what proceeded, in fact, which was a whole series of what I can only call seduction, one of the other, mutual seduction, each one of which took place in a setting which was one part of some film that he had already made. That included standing in the middle of the Arco di Trionfo with the traffic running around and so on, and gesticulating and so on and so on. And the more that I did that, the more fun we were having, and the more natural it was. And we just, I don't know, we accepted it as being, because that was the what can I say, the genuine way it was. I never, as I said, I never kowtowed to him, anything of the kind.
And how long after your first meeting did you come up with the idea of making a movie about his life achievement?
Well, I didn't state it that way for first. Initially, he said, "Oh, well, that's, no problem. You can bring a crew into, and I'll give you permission to that." And I said, very simply, I said, no, Federico, that's not the idea. We want you to do something, or I would like you to do something about myself. And he said, "About myself?" I said, yeah. Oh. So that kind of surprised him. Then they progressed a conversation about the difference between film and television, in which I outlined for him one of the major difference is that television was in your home, so it was much more personal in that respect, instead of being in a large movie theater. And I said to him, again, after he said, because he wouldn't have been involved at all. I mean, he would have been doing what he was doing, and he'd been shot, but that was not the idea. It was not my idea. And I said to him at the time a sentence which he wrote into the many times that he wrote about our relationship. And what I said to him, "No, Federico, I think we should do something more." What word did I use?
Robust.
Robust or intense, or, something like that. And he got a big kick out of it. He laughed, and he made sure, because then after that there were several, as in typical funny, there were several versions of our meeting. Not all of them true, because he loved to play with reality. And in fact, the difference which I outlined for him between film and television, then a relatively new medium, was that it was very realistic. It was in your home, it was more intimate, and a lot of it was not filmed, it was like on tape, and so that had a quality that was closer to real. And he loved that. And the reason that he loved it was because he looked at it as another means of playing with reality, playing around with reality. And the other part of it, which I actually didn't know, is that he had been feeling quite depressed at the time, because it was scheduled to do a major film called, here I go. Okay, I'm having one of my first...
Not the dead.
What? No. It'll come at a certain point. But it fell through. And it was a major film. And he wanted Mastroianni. Mastroianni didn't want to do it, and all kinds of things. And he was very depressed about that. And I later was told I didn't realize that because he became more and more cheerful with me, and we became together more and more playful. But in fact, he was depressed because of that. And people had virtually come up to me in certain places and said, you got him out of his...
You saved him.
His depression.
Yeah.
You brought him out of that. So it was that. So there were these extraordinary, and believe me, I'm not bragging about this, I'm reporting it.
Yes.
That there were these very unusual things.
Yes.
First and foremost, a 25, 26-year-old kid.
Yes.
Who has an idea, and is working with one of the greatest artists, cinema artists of all time, if not the greatest. So that was very unusual, and the press started to pick up.
How long did the production last?
The production lasted only about 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
So you spent day in and day out for 2 months with...
No. I wasn't always there for it. I had other responsibilities at NBC. I couldn't be there all the time.
But it was produced in Italy.
In Rome. Completely in Rome. So it was done, and the word started to get out more. That there was this very unique, and there's a little kind of introduction that IMDb has made now, which put another page in my pages at IMDb, even before that the film had been even released, which was again an unusual thing. There's these unusual things kept happening, and in this case, they said that they wrote a little blurb that said the strange and wonderful story of Peter Glodfarb, and Fellini.
So it's fast forwarding 45 years to today.
Yeah.
It's really ironic and coincidental and timely that now Italians are making a movie about they have already made a movie about your lifetime achievement.
Yeah.
And that movie has already been acquired by Netflix and is about to go global.
Just recently, exactly.
In multiple countries, in the United States and Europe.
Quite a surprise, I must say. But it's had a kind of, charm to it, which I never dreamed of. I thought, well, I'll be making this movie, and that's a nice thing to put in my resume, and that'll be, it happened. But it's like, it won't be forgotten and won't let me forget.
Yes.
And people come up and tell me how much it meant for him and how much I contributed.
Yes.
Because it was a triple play. Number one, Fellini making film with a 25-year-old kid. Number two, working with an American.
Yes.
I never did before. Number three, working for television for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Those are all of those
first with you.
Were first.
All three of them were with you. And
and then there was the issue when I was invited to a festival about 2.5 years ago in Italy to introduce the original film. Directors.
And it was aired on NBC networks.
Initially, yes. Yeah, first on television, and then it started to go all around because the rights were taken over by a company. I don't know if I should mention it or not, but anyway, they took over the management of it, and there were attorneys who mine, and so on, and it just, the rentals kept going on for some reason. And then, so after this invitation to introduce the film at the festival, I got a call from a director in Rome, well-known documentary director, who asked if he could have permission to interview me.
Wow.
And I said, fine. And for one thing, it was going to be in Rome, and I would get a chance to be in Rome for a little bit. A wonderful, wonderful city. And I loved from the moment I first went there. So I went, and the interview was shot. The interview was shot about a little over an hour, not too much, an hour and 10, an hour 15 maybe. And when it was over, the director just went crazy. And he said, "Oh my God, it's an incredible story. This should be a film in itself."
Wow.
And as they say, the rest was history.
That's right.
So now there's this film, which was just recently
Which is
picked up.
called?
Well, it's got a peculiar title because the title has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do
with the content.
With the content. Content is about me talking about my experience,
right.
and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
The title is Fellini, I'm a Clown.
Okay.
Totally out there. I won't go into the story behind
It's in Italian. It's produced in Italian and dubbed in subtitled in English.
Subtitle, no dubbing.
Not dubbing. Okay.
No. And there are scenes from the original scene in the movie.
Okay, good.
But the only person to appear, well, as I said, there's some scenes from it, but the only person to appear is me. With basically
just like the one you did about Fellini. The only one who appeared in it was Fellini.
No.
There were more people?
Oh gosh, yes. That was a full film. Oh yeah, there was Mastroianni and all kinds of people.
Who else was in it besides Fellini and Mastroianni?
Well, you wouldn't know. One of the women actors was in it, Mastroianni, and then the whole cast of typical Fellini characters that he picks up from all kinds of places.
Now, I want you to compare Fellini. I mean, there was a time, 60s and 70s, actually 50s, 60s, and 70s, that there were these great Italian directors.
Yes.
Fellini, Zeffirelli, Pasolini, right? And then what's about Italy that it makes it such a fertile ground for cinema, and especially for directors like these guys, and even recently, Antonio Benini and
the only answer to that can only be an historical, evocative thing that happened, moving from that period of the De Sica and other directors such as that, including Fellini's early Bicycle Fever, that including La Strada, etc. And then out of that, though, the next period to evolve were these newer, more modern directors who were no longer following that particular kind of film, but were innovators. Much more character, I would say, but in a different style.
Can you say a few words about Zeffirelli? I love Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was a very close friend of mine.
Jesus of Nazareth.
We spent a lot of time together, and also a multi-talented. He was a designer,
yes,
an incredible designer of operas, an opera director, and so on and so on, and infinitum. So that was he's an individual, and you see the other thing. Well, I can't say that the earlier ones weren't individuals. It's hard to say, but the styles were, and there was a tremendous amount of variety with all of them, where the earlier ones were all of a particular style.
Yeah.
Each one of them.
The Brother, Sun, and Sister Moon, a movie by Pasolini. Earlier, and the Jesus of Nazareth, they were religious. I mean, they were actually not religious, but complementary of religion, not anti-religion. But then later on, he became a little bit disenchanted with religion.
I would say, yeah. Well, more daring.
Yes, more daring, yes.
More outrageous,
yes.
And excuse the word, but dirtier.
Yes.
That's what it was.
And did something happen in his life that caused that transition?
I don't. It had a lot to do with his tastes, shall I say?
And he became more confident of his ability to produce, to take up.
He became more daring. You know,
Decameron.
It's not a question of competence. It was more outrageous.
Outrageous, yes. Yes.
Yeah. He was always gifted.
Yes.
He was always gifted.
I mean, there are many big directors around the world. I mean, Martin Scorsese, Stanley Kubrick, Francis Ford Coppola, you know, Steven Spielberg, Quentin Tarantino. But how do you compare this generation of American directors with that great generation of 50s, 60s, 70s Italian?
Again, it's, well, the world got different. It wasn't just all of a sudden all these cinema people decided to do something different. It was the world. The world changed. Post-war, you know, at one point earlier on, other things, economic issues, other wars, other, you know, like we have now, you know, plagues,
right,
and so on. So this all influenced. It's hard to say because we're in a little bit of a chicken and egg situation.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Was it the world that influenced the directors, or the directors who
made the change? Changed the world.
And they manifested.
That's the right. Change. Yeah, you know, one of the questions that always intrigues me is these great movies that are made in the Western countries. You know, the United States, which has Hollywood and Italy, and you know, even England, and all of these movies, all of these great movies, which have, you know, intrigued not just me, everyone around the world. They're made in the Western world. I haven't seen. Correct me if I'm wrong. Since you're in the cinema and theater, have you seen a great movie made in Russia or China or Cuba or Venezuela that even comes close to these great Italian movies? And if not,
unquestionably. I mean, some of the smaller countries, maybe not necessarily,
right.
But certainly one of the larger countries, and including yours.
Yes,
you know,
Iran. Yeah. And Asghar Farhadi just won Hero in Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is that there was not a huge flock of directors.
That's right.
But the ones that were, they just blossomed. They blossomed out and became very well known. Before, there wasn't that much knowledge, or, if I remember correctly, quality or things of so-called foreign films, except with something like Russia, where you had now another one, the great director, and I'm not remembering his name.
I mean, I know of Satyajit Ray of India. I know Jean-Luc Godard of France. I know what's the Japanese, the famous, bigger Kurosawa. And then I know Abbas Kiarostami of Iran and Asghar Farhadi of Iran. But you know, this the element that makes a great director. It's not in the political system.
But it's each one is quite different from the other. There's no copying going on. These directors, as individuals, burst upon the scene, were unexpected. You can't talk of them as having come from something. All right, De Sica made a transition, and certainly Federico made a great thing from his earlier films, you know. But other than that, and it all falls down, not down in the negative sense, it all falls on, for, in my opinion, one word: talent.
Yes.
So that it is very difficult to generalize, and one wouldn't necessarily want to generalize. But these individuals, so because you notice with all these countries, there's one or two directors that come out, you know, not the whole country.
Right.
Although even there's the period of the Czech cinema, you know, and little by little all the different ones. That's also just kind of I don't want to say ordinary in the sense of it being a criticism, no, but it's the way of life.
Mm-hmm.
Things evolve.
Right.
And we continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that evolution manifests in many different ways.
Mm-hmm. You know, in this country, we have big budget movies,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like adventure movies, and
millions
we used to have Western movies with big budget. Now we have Star Wars movies, and these are extremely. We have movies with the production cost of $300 million that don't intrigue the viewers as much as these low-budget, so-called festival artistic movies.
Yeah, because those are what do we call them? Great, fancy, schmancy.
Yes.
And its worth is not necessarily character,
Mm-hmm.
or not so much what I would say to be so special,
Mm-hmm.
intimate. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
those films are far from intimate.
Yes.
Where the others are human.
Yes.
I had an experience myself, personal experience. I never, until a certain point, which I'll say, thought of film as anything but pure entertainment, because I grew up in New York City, and
Right.
I went to movies with my parents
Right.
growing up that were the Hollywood movies,
Right.
which were not necessarily in great depth for any reason. But then, during one of the years of my college, I went for 6 months. I went to school in Italy, and then the next 6 months I went in London. And I was choosing classes that I was interested in, certain classes on theater, types of theater, et cetera, et cetera. And then I noticed that there was a class being advertised on the history of French film.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, that sounds like really interesting. Well, it was more than interesting for me. It was completely opened my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I was flabbergasted. And what I was flabbergasted about is that film could be a personal medium.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And neither did a lot of my.
So are you saying that these great directors nourish this personal element of the perception?
They were personal. Their
Yes.
films were
And that's
personal,
what makes it great.
which I didn't know them to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't exactly an amateur with films.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a lot about films.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's this point that, and I went crazy as only a kid of 23 years or something like that. And I would go every weekend. I'd go to Paris to watch films, because Paris is probably the best place in the entire world, because they have umpteen little tiny, 50-seat, 40-seat that you could see almost any film ever made. And I was there, and boy, did I learn a lot.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question. If a big studio comes to you today and gives you unlimited budget and say, make whatever you want, a 2-hour movie about any subject with any actors, actresses, any setting, any language, what would you do and what film will you make?
Well, I wouldn't automatically say yes. It would depend completely on me of the cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And by cast of characters, I'm not talking about just actors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the technicians. What's the director of photography like? What are all the technical aspects and so on. And it certainly would be an intimate film,
Mm-hmm.
not a Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a Federico and I had an idea that I talked to him about,
Mm-hmm.
that he actually loved, and we were going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this idea, and I don't necessarily know where the ideas come from. They
Mm-hmm.
just come. And what this was is I wanted to do one of these films of 3 series, like 3 different films, except the theme would be the best, and the directors, well, the theme would be the creation of the world. The directors were to be Fellini, Kurosawa, and Ingmar Bergman. Each one was there. Fellini loved it. He just loved the idea. But then again, the world changed. You know?
Yes.
And it just couldn't happen.
So today, if you have an unlimited budget, any cast of characters, any technical crew that you desire, will you make a movie like Amarcord or Decameron or La Strada or Romeo and Juliet?
No, I would make a Peter Glodfarb movie. You know,
About life
because
after Corona.
Maybe. Yeah, and also I don't think I anywhere near would require those kinds of so much of big budgets. That doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. Good movies don't take much money.
Yeah, it's not what it means. No.
Will you make a movie with the big American actors like DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson, Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise in it? Or will you go after totally unknown characters?
Neither.
Like
it depends on what the film is. And you see, to me, the actor is not responsible for what the film is. There's a film, and then one casts the actor. But I don't feel about like impressing everything, anything. It's what I do. It comes from my heart. And it's intuitive.
Right.
It's intuitive.
So all these big studios who paid tens of millions of dollars to these big actors and actresses,
that doesn't impress me, because you know something, that in a way you could say it's selfish, because that all takes it away from me. And what I'm doing,
will be the center of attention,
would be something very personal.
Right.
I don't mean autobiographical, but something personal. And one of the problems with great stars is that they what can I say? They influence the balance of a film. And people are busy watching them and maybe not, what can I say, taking into the story.
I'm going to ask you another question about the political aspect of movie production. There is this Greek director called Kostagavras, who made the movie Z, and State of Siege. And the theme of the movie was about the military dictatorship in Greece and the struggle of the Greek people to bring democracy to Greece. This guy, Kostagavras, was the director. Irene Papas was the actress, very famous actress, and a soundtrack maker, a guy by the name of Mikis Theodorakis. These 3 people, this trio, Kostagavras, Irene Papas, and Mikis Theodorakis, they left their trademark of the political movies in the entire South American liberation movement. The movements in South America against the dictatorships of Argentina and Chile and Brazil. Do you think movies have an obligation towards political change, to bring about the political change, because they're a very powerful way of provoking people under suppression?
I don't know. To me, again, it gets down to the personal, and there's just in the film business a lot of, there's not always that much originality, is what I want to say. You want to do something because the subject is trendy, you see, and so many films are about, and that's not necessarily criticism, but there is a group of a certain type of films that I describe as the sellers. And what I mean by that is they are selling the film, either lavish, whatever's, scenery and so on, or horror, or any one of the other kinds of films. They're selling it, and it becomes popular. But that's not necessarily something of quality, and I would only be interested in something like that.
So
Not pretentiously, because I would never to myself, I'm going to make a quality film. No, it's I don't know what's going to come from inside me. I don't have a plan, you know. So it's hard to say. And again, I will say, very difficult to generalize, especially this day and age. You know.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because this Iranian director, Asghar Farhadi, who just won the Great Prize of in Cannes Festival, you know, there is a lot of political turmoil going on in Iran, especially in one of the provinces of Khuzestan. There's shortage of water, and there are demonstrations, and you know, people are suffering, and the government is suppressing. And there were a lot of Iranians who were critical of Farhadi. When he had the big international stage in Cannes, he didn't highlight the plight of the Iranian people under the suppression of the Iranian government. And they made a comparison with those great directors, great actors and actresses, you know, like Marlon Brando, who refused to
accept
it because of Indians, and many other people, you know, who have been in allegiance and sympathy of not necessarily people of America, but you know, people in the first world.
Those who are.
I mean, is this leveling this criticism against a great director? Is it justified?
No, they're notable for being socially committed.
Yes.
They're socially committed.
These people are socially committed because they're aware of the power of the medium in their hands. And
that's the thing they know. So they choose to express,
like,
you know, their
like Steven Spielberg. You know, I mean, there were a lot of talk about the fact that Spielberg never won Oscar, and then when he made the Schindler's List about the plight of his people, about the Jewish people, and then he got the Oscar. You know, so he felt, it seems to me like he felt socially obliged to make a movie about the plight of a group of people who were suppressed. And he was rewarded. You know, was he rewarded for his directing?
The other thing I want to say, I keep coming out with different types of movies, and another genre is a absolute refusal to waver. You know, that there's a commitment there to what they're doing. And that commitment is not to impress, but to express. That's a very big difference.
Yes.
Impressing and expressing.
Yes. When you express, there is a film in you that you bring it out.
Yes.
When you impress, you are trying to use your talent to put an effect on something outside of
those are what I call the movies that are trying to sell you.
Right. Right. That's a great point.
And you feel that.
Yes, the contrast between impressing people and expressing yourself. So you think people who actually understand the story in them and bring it out,
it's their own, you know, I mean, creative people each has their own means of expression.
Yes. And, you know, there is this great psychologist by the name of Rollo May, who has a book called Courage to Create. And the story of Courage to Create is about anxiety and people who are stricken with anxiety, the disorder of anxiety. And make the long story short, he says, every human being has a creativity, which is the product of a lifetime experience with that. And those who don't get a chance to actually express that creativity, they will be stricken with this great anxiety because everybody is aware of their own creativity, this caged, this imprisoned creativity in them that they need to bring it out, but they're also aware of the limitations and that conflict between the need to give birth to this creativity.
Difficult. It's suffering. It's caused suffering.
Yes.
People are not always consciousness that that's what causes the suffering.
Yes.
That they're being prevented from, you know, expressing themselves in a way that's genuine for them.
Peter, thank you very much. It was a great conversation. We are going to bring it to an end here, but we have to promise to come back to us another episode. and we are going to talk about different subjects next time. And I want you to promise to our audience that you will come and tell us about all this amazing experience that you've had with movie and theater.
I mean, if you can put up with me,
you're a great person. There's no putting up required. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And
thank
goodbye
you
to all of you.
This opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.